Hi, Gobi. This meeting might end up being a one-on-one, or
Yeah, I just noticed too. So how was the LPC conference, Dan?
it was good. Um, if you have no, maybe I'll give you that update, and we can drop here because I'm not sure other people are going to show up. Um, it was good. I think for me the big thing was the hallway track, to get on the same page
Uh-huh.
with Alexi from AMD and Jason Gunthorpe about the the user ABI for defining this new mode of a device that can be converted from shared to private.
Hmm.
Um, and there's Yulun too. Um, yeah, so Yulun, I was just giving Gobi kind of the update on what we talked about at LPC at Plumbers. Um, yeah. So I think we kind of talked through like, hey, the RFC was kind of obviously an RFC. Like some of these things were definitely AMD TIO specific, and so now we kind of agreed to uh, uh, step back and make sure the framework works for everybody, which is kind of along the lines of what I put out earlier. I think the division of labor going forward is, well, Alexi's going to take a look at the feedback from Jason about this new um, this new this new infrastructure going into IOMMUFD that he thinks would be a good place to land this distinction of describing that a device can enter this secure IOMMU world. So Alexis is going to take a look at that. Um, I'm going to take a look um, at the parts of his RFC patch that kind of touch the PCI core and kind of general framework stuff. I'm going to take a look at like refactoring his code into some of my ideas there on that piece, um, and then and then the kind of the Intel RFC is getting to the point where it can start being on the list. But before that, we're also looking at um, the other big update from Plumbers was Lucas Wunner had his BOF about attestation evidence and measurements and these things like this. And the kind of critical outcome of that was saying like the this kind of Sisyphus based thing that's kind of very focused on OpenSSL compatibility and very focused on the CMA use case uh, doesn't really lend itself very well to even to the CMA case. Like there's a lot of
Yeah, even
parameters,
to the CMAKs. Yeah.
and logs and material, and several people talked to him like, hey, let's put this behind a netlink interface where if people want to log things, they can subscribe to broadcast events. We don't need to put that. We don't need to maintain a kernel log of these things, and we can have an interface that can take parameters and say, hey, I want to get all measurements, or I only care about these ones, and so that's something that Sisyphus is not great at, um, and and um, and Lucas agreed. So he's going to rework his patches to add this netlink add this netlink interface, um, and then I think that will make it much easier to do exactly what we want for the TSM case, which is um, just get us a dump of everything in the format that user space can just do its thing, and the kernel doesn't need to be worried about the format as,
In
as
that
much.
model, TSM is still a pass-through, right, Dan? So TSM is going to get the report and just pass it to the tenant, right?
Right, yeah. That the tenant just basically has a direct pipe to get to just grab all the evidence at once. Um,
Sure,
and
along with the transcript, unfortunately.
uh, yeah, I mean, I think the transcript, I mean, if the TSM has transcript storage, then yeah, then uh, it will pull then. Like if you're expecting that the VMM is uh, logging SPDM requests and then putting that in and then storing those. I think we would need to figure out how to buffer that and record it and be able to replay it when the guest asks for it.
Okay.
But um, that's something we can build with Netlink. That's harder to kind of coordinate with SysFS, where we kind of have to have a permanent memory resident file that isn't in that keeps growing, and we don't know. It's like it'd be best if that's something we can just have user space store wherever it needs to, and if the tenant needs it, and we can figure out the interface there. But yeah, so we kind of have like these kind of three parallel efforts in flight, which is um, assigned device, private ABI, um, the kind of the IRMMUFD work, then the PCI core integration piece, the kind of framework, um, the eventual Intel RFC, and then the rebasing all of this on top of a Netlink interface to get the attestation evidence out. So I think so those things are all happening in parallel.
Okay. On the first one about the IOMMU transition from shared to private mode, will it happen without any impact to the device, or the device has to be unplugged and replugged again?
I mean, it's it this event of the final conversion. I'm not sure. Like, initially, it's going to require at least the guarantee that um, that shared DMA is disabled and private DMA is enabled. And right now, the easiest way to ensure that is to just rebind the device. It doesn't necessarily need to be a full hot plug event, but I mean, a full hot plug event would also is a heavier hammer. But at a minimum, it's until we can get better enlightened IMU drivers that across. Yeah, I mean, have that concept understood in the IMU core about, hey, this device has a foot in two worlds. Then we can go back and relax that. But I think the right now, like when I talk to the RMFD maintainer, so when I talk to Jason, he's he's nervous about that case, and so I'd rather spend my time getting the basics going and then work on that work on that anxiety on the back end versus on the front end. Um,
Sure.
that's the thinking there. So yeah, it will be a bit violent to start is the idea.
Okay. And on the attestation side, there is one gap in the specification as well that we need to somehow address it in the future meetings. And so the SPDM system is going to be shared across all the tenants, right? So we cannot isolate a given set of measurements for a given tenant in the current model.
You mean in the current TDIS model?
Correct. Yeah. So the device is going to produce the same report for every tenant that's going to request for the report.
You mean in the sense like if a single PF had multiple VFs,
Correct. Yeah.
each tenant is going to see
Correct.
information
Yeah. We
about
cannot
other.
have tenant specific measurements in the report.
Okay.
The current model.
But I mean, well, without delving into things that might be like PC, like it is. I mean, like this is a general observation of the existing spec. I don't want to step on the toes of any kind of confidential discussions that's going on the PCI SIG, but um, from a practical perspective, like what it is a concern just like general cleanliness of like information leaks across tenants. Like, oh hey, like I know something about my peers, or
Correct. So yeah, with with no way to isolate the measurements, we are forced to create, we're forced to produce a subset of measurement that's going to be common across all the tenants. We obviously cannot have measurements that could be leaked across tenants, right? So we are forced to measure only those components that are common across all the tenants.
Oh, I see you're saying like that like it might be a case that a TDI would want to have a specific like, oh, I know this TDI was assigned to this tenant and the tenant cares about this measurement, but nobody else should
Right.
care about this.
Yeah.
You can't do that. You have to
Correct. Correct.
baseline the measurements.
Correct. Or the tenant is loading something, or triggering some security event that needs to be measured. We cannot do that anymore.
Okay. Oh, that's also true. So like, so in this case where the device arrives unlocked and we do some configuration and then lock it, that whatever if that tenant provided something um, tenant specific, you kind of don't want that showing up in some other tenant's measurement report to
Yeah.
say, oh, hey, this other tenant loaded this thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. But um, but how does that read on the Linux enabling or the ABI for measurements? Are you saying
So
like
yeah, that's not going to
make
impact.
make make room for this to
Yeah,
be the
that's not
same?
going to impact the ABS obviously. So we either have to, with the current specification of TDS, which doesn't have any room to add any TDS specific info to the SPDM get measurements call. We either have to use some sort of TDS VDM or some reserve bits in the SPDM request to provide the TDS specific information to the TDI, or the tenant specific info, or some sort of identifier to the device. So it's not going to impact any other Linux APIs per se. It's
Okay.
mostly on the TSM to DSM calls.
I mean, but DSM. But like I could imagine that a TSM implementation might say, okay, like here's the TDIS standard way to get generic measurements, and then whether it's in the TDIS spec or not, like a platform could say, here's the here's the off-brand way to get
It could,
tenant management, things like that.
yeah, it could, or we go to PCI SIG and make them some, or add them, make them add new APIs for the TDS.
Okay. I mean, because that is something like Linux could also be like, like if upstream Linux sees a need for it, and
Yeah,
has the
it could.
ability that it could provide a generic way, and then
Yep,
I mean, it's not unheard of that Linux use cases are back specified into the specification. Um,
sure. Yeah, if everyone agrees to that, yeah, we can add a Linux specific call here.
okay. I mean, it's something to circle back to when we have the base enabling.
Yep.
It's not clear to me exactly what you would need to hide from another tenant, right? Because there's three operating modes, right? There's direct device assignment or pass through, and then there's assigning of a PF or a VF, right? The PF driver would come most likely from the host, regardless, and that would be shared across tenants. And are you saying you support different kernel drivers per VF?
Yes, we do. The VF could be loading its own piece of code that runs on the device. And if that needs to be measured, we cannot do that with the current specification.
There's some engine on the device that you say, oh, hey, this is my tenant provided kernel for that engine.
Yep.
Yeah.
But I guess that's something you might want a measurement for. But at that point, the tenant itself has already loaded that into the device, right? So the tenant was able to verify that before it even got to put it into the device.
But oh, go ahead.
Go ahead, Dan.
I mean, I was going to say, like, my understanding would be that, like, it's putting into that device in this unlocked mode, right? Like, and you want to, and then when you lock the device, you want to like get a confirmation that this is a loaded thing after it's locked. So I'm not sure that the tenant can trust that just because it loaded it um, unless you have a locked loading facility, then maybe. But if it's unlock loading, then you have no idea if the thing was lying to you as you were doing the load.
Well,
Yeah.
loading a workload into the card would require the card to be in the run state via tdisk.
It's not really the workload, but some sort of microcode to bring up the engines that's dedicated to the given tenant.
Okay.
And yeah, you may be loading something in the unlock state.
Okay. Yeah. So that's a interesting use case to keep in mind.
Sorry, so loading something in the locked state, will that change the configuration of the TDI? If that is case, the TDI should not keep in the locked state, right?
No, TDA, correct. So TDA has to keep track of all things that got loaded during unlock state and include that as a part of the measurement.
And the assumption would be that once you're locked, you can't change this part of the configuration.
Yeah.
So yeah. So you.
Yeah. I mean, if that is the case, could the TDI interface report to tell the device specific information?
Yes, that's one way to. I mean, today we cannot send any device specific information to the get measurements call today. Right? You cannot pass any identifier in the get measurements call to indicate which TDA to fetch the report from. And that is the gap.
Wouldn't the solution be for TDIs to be running under different SPM sessions then?
That would be ideal.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that will solve the problem, definitely. But today we share the single SPDM.
Yeah, because if the SPDM channel's sharing the same keying data across two different TDIs that you want to keep separate from each other, that wouldn't provide adequate separation, even in the non-measurement case, right?
Even the non-measurement case. Sorry, can you repeat the last sentence, David?
I just mean in normal operating mode, right? If you really did want to keep two TDIs completely isolated from each other, having them over the same SPDM session with the same session keys could potentially introduce a situation where you could spy on the data, and since you both share the same session keys.
No, the session keys are not exposed to a tenant directly. It's within the TSM and DSM boundary, right? So I think that is the reasoning we are using to justify a single SPDM session shared across multiple tenants.
So yeah. So like you're not. I mean, even though separate SPDM sessions would solve it, the you can also get there by still keeping the single session model, but at least trusting the TSM to keep things isolated when you ask for tenant specific details.
Correct. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. So for me, like this meeting was useful to get on the same page, like uh, um, up to producing RFCs and making sure things are going in the right direction. And even there we had some miscommunications, but like I think we're transitioning into this iteration phase now finally, where we can start throwing more code at each other on the list and talk about it less. Um, uh, we have this call again in at the EU friendly time in a couple of weeks. So yeah, we'll play it by ear. I'm wondering if we need to go to if it's okay to go to a monthly cadence on this. But we'll see. Like yeah, we had more people show up today, which is good. I was going to say the other thing that came to mind in terms of output from this past week or a couple weeks ago in Europe was, and I personally haven't gone through it. I don't know if anybody else has gone through it yet, but Paolo did an update on guest memfd futures, and like we talked about last time, it was looking like he was going to invalidate the need to develop a discard manager for managing the because right now the discard manager concept in QEMU is about like memory ballooning, memory add, delete. Wasn't really meant for private shared conversion, and 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 using this discard manager in that way is showing the problems. Like this binary state is now kind of now has this. It's not a single bit; it's 2 bits. It's like is it being unplugged or is it being disconverted? And so yeah, that's still on my list of things to catch up on. That was the session I didn't attend, but if anybody else attended that and can speak to it, that'd be good. But I don't think so in this call. Yeah, so I think all those things are in flight for the next few weeks. I'm hoping that by November, like we have some of these things put to bed, at least a clearer picture on the IOM-UFD integration and the PCI core integration. And I know Lucas has made progress with the CMA stuff, like the base things with the crypto maintainer. So I think he'll have cycles soon to look at that netlink feedback from plumbers.
So do you have a summary of that discussion anywhere? Because it's still not clear to me why Netlink is a better interface than the SysFS node there.
So,
especially if you want to have it show up in the guest and have only the guest related materials, right?
Right. I mean, so we're still going to end up with like whether so Lucas's patches so far were only kind of the VMM side things, and not even TSM related. So he was still pretty far away. So it only kind of rhymed with what we were doing. We were never going to use it directly, but the idea would be that that we have a TSM concept in the host, and we have a TSM concept in the guest, and the guest TSM would have this netlink interface. I can play the video. Like Lucas produced a video, just like kind of demonstrating what he built, and it was like basically halfway through the video, somebody's like this. You have all these parameters. You have all these like formatting knobs and log size knobs, and it was basically straining the ability of what SysFS can do. Especially like the kind of final straw was, oh, I have a sys control to determine the maximum size of a SysFS file, so I can record these things that might grow. And that was where like, okay, no, that's where Netlink was raised. Like Netlink can do that. It can just broadcast these events. The user space can do the storage. We don't need to store it in the kernel. So it was really more for practical concerns of pushing what SysFS can do more than anything else.
I figured the kernel wasn't even going to store the measurement because you'd want it fresh. So
this is about transcript storage.
Okay, yeah, so that's different than measurement storage, right? Because the get measurement calls clears the M1 and M2 transcripts.
Right.
So
it clears the
M1 and M2. Yeah. I thought like you can have a SysFS node that calls something behind the scenes and just generates a buffer that gets read, right?
It can, but if we have a transcript that can grow without bounds, like that, now you need a knob to control the bounds versus don't even try to log it in the kernel, just broadcast it to user space and make user space responsible for recording that, and it can store it wherever it needs to, not in kernel memory.
Yeah, I guess this is maybe I'm just unclear on the spec because the spec doesn't require you to like the get measurements call doesn't give you the transcript, right? No. And you can have a measurement transcript, but the measurement transcript is just a way for you to not have to sign a large block of data. You basically can concatenate measurement indexes 1 through whatever, and sign only part of it. And that's the purpose of a measurement transcript. But even that's generated, like, that's not really stored anywhere. Is my understanding. But I don't know. It seems a lot easier to read a file than have to deal with broadcast events from Netlink, and then you can deal with it when you want it, as opposed to,
Yeah,
yeah.
like if I can find the let me see if I can find the video. But like,
Yeah, I'd be interested in seeing the video because I couldn't find the video for Room 1.14. There didn't seem to be one up on the LPC website, which is where it claims the BOF for this was.
Yeah, it was more of it was more of like it was more of the examples were showing like here like these long command lines of how you get information out of SysFS, and somebody basically made the claim that this should just be a tool, it's not a file, because like it's not just cat a file, it's cat a file, pipe it here, translate this, grab these things out of it, and so what it
Yeah.
was, and at that point, once you have a binary that's helper, then the transport, then it being a file doesn't really buy you anything, and you can afford to go with Netlink.
Yeah, so it was this with the original proposal that he actually breaks every measurement block out into a different SysFS file. Is that what he was presenting?
Well, and that was part of the concern. Oh, sorry, I was looking at the thing. The the fact that different people want different things. Like some people want one measurement, some people want all of them. Like don't code up those individual use cases into separate SysFS files. Just have a ABI that says take a parameter for the format you want.
Well, the format's always going to be the same, right? Since it's SPDM. As of right now, the only standard format for SPDM is DMTF until the standard extends it to something else.
I mean format in terms of, do you want one measurement or 15 or all of them, kind of thing. But if you look
most
at
of the realistic use cases, I cannot think of a case where someone needs a single measurement index.
I can't think of one either, but it's been proposed by someone. I don't know if I could say who it is, but someone apparently. It's the reason why Lucas has it structured the way it is. Someone has asked for the ability to pull just particular measurement indexes. That's what they care about. But yeah, from our perspective, I'm assuming you work for a GPU vendor as well.
Yeah.
Our perspective, we want the whole thing. There's
Exactly.
not a time where we want to pull a single measurement, and we don't want it. We just want it as one big set of bytes, because we want to retrieve it, send it to either some sort of library, or have the TDM manage it directly and package it up into concise evidence and send it off along the way to whatever verifier we're using.
Exactly.
Yeah. So.
Yeah. To be clear, like Lucas is mainly reacting to the fact that the only devices on the market that he has access to are these SSDs.
Yeah.
And the SSD use case for this is not computational computing. It's about inventory. It's about, I know exactly which measurement I care about for this one device, and so it's very much driven by that thing, which really isn't computational computing, and not what we're doing. So that's where that came from.
He should be able to get his hands on an H100 and use SPDM on that. Like, it may have to go through the NVIDIA management library to trigger it, but
yeah, we can help you with that. So trying to get a specific index is also not a forward-looking approach, right? We are moving to EAT, new SPDM standard. So EAT is it's a climb basis, not an index basis.
Yeah, and the weird thing about pulling individual indices out of an SPDM measurement is there's no way to say, give me this set of indices, right? You'd have to pull each index one at a time, and then have all those signed, and then package that up somehow and hand it off to whoever would need it. Maybe they really do just want one single measurement, which seems odd to me, but like the fact that you could pull individual measurement indices through the spec always seemed weird to me. Like I
Oh, yeah.
can understand it, but every single
I
time
believe
you
it
want
was.
fresh measurements.
I believe it is mainly meant for space concerns.
Yeah.
Right. So, but for a given device, all the measurements collectively define the security property of the device,
Yeah.
not individual one. Yeah.
Especially something as complex as the accelerator cards, right? Because
Exactly.
there's a whole bunch of stuff in that measurements. Like,
Yeah. So I posted the demo video in the chat. Like watch the video and then around the parts where you start seeing complicated SysFS
okay.
or complicated command lines to dump stuff out of SysFS. That's around the point where the audience many revolt and said, no, we need a tool for this. We need a tool for all of this. And once we have a tool, then we can use something like that link. So,
Which is why I was on the side of, just give the full DMTF measurement block, not the measurement block, the full measurement record back to user space and let them do with it what they will, right?
Yep.
And whatever tool consumes it, which is why the breaking out everything into individual indices seemed really like an odd solution. Like if you want to do that, ready, like that has no business being in the kernel, right?
Oh, yeah.
Disassembling it and reassembling it, makes no sense there.
I mean, and like, and if Lucas was here, I would say the same thing. That like he's very much focused on the native use case. He very much wants to like he almost like wants to do device security without a TSM kind of. That's kind of his his interest. But yeah, like so at some point they're the place where we work together and use the same interface, and other places where TSM needs something different, and we just build a different thing. It's we're not. It's not like we're beholden to Lucas's design, but as long as he's kind of in the space of, hey, here's PCI core infrastructure for getting extra security information out of devices, like we can build on that as until it doesn't make sense to keep building on that. And
because the host still needs to make the SPDM calls regardless of where the key for the call comes from, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, even if the TSM is going to provide the key that's used to sign the SPDM message for the device, or whatever, it still has to come through the VMM.
Correct. Yeah. We're still doing a loop through and using the core kernel's DOE mailbox transport. Yep.
Yeah, so having get measurement and everything implemented in PCI core is still very usable from our standpoint as well.
Yep.
Because it may change. There may be a wrapper that pulls the key from the TSM as opposed to the kernel keyring or something like that instead. But at the end of the day, dealing with that message request and response is still pretty generic, regardless of whether it's CMA or TDISP.
Yep. Yeah. So we're gonna rhyme and riff off of Lucas's stuff and then do our own solos when we need to.
Yeah, I started writing the get measurement call in his patch set just to see because I found, once again it comes back to hard drives, but a QEMU allows you to spoof an NVMe drive for testing SPDM out. So from that perspective, it's pretty straightforward to be able to test the SPDM get measurements call against a QEMU based emulated NVMe.
Oh, that's useful.
Yeah, they have DMTF has two, and they're both written by Western Digital, I believe. Oh, no, sorry, one's written by DMTF, the other's written by Western Digital. There's SPDM EMU, which is a C-based emulator for SPDM. It handles both emulating the responder and the requester. And then there's also SPDM utils, which is written in Rust instead. And that does the same thing, except it's Rust instead of C. And that one, I believe, is written by Western Digital, and the C one's written by the DMTF directly. So,
isn't there a library written by our own?
Juan worked on libSPDM. He has a lot.
Yes, it's a C implementation, and that's what we use.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
But yeah, I'm just trying to see if we really need all the extra scaffolding and infrastructure to deal with Netlink when it could just be, a function backed sysfs node that just gives you a buffer back. But I guess it'd be weird because you need some way to be able to tell what the size of that read is and everything. So that might be a little bit more complex than the Netlink interface just giving you a message back.
Yeah,
Because you can get the continuous there.
It really comes back to like, can we think of a single file that solves all a single file that solves all use cases, or like once we get into potentially into the single use case like thing or not, or needing to provide a parameter, or needing to collect like this atomic set of information in one call. That's where that's where we're going to be like, sysfs, you only allow us to do one thing at a time in one way forever, and that like can be a bit more parameter, and it can be more transaction based versus kind of a static blob based.
Yeah, I'll have to see what they said the requirements were in that video because right now there's no way from SPDM in an atomic way. Like, let's say you wanted to have this tool be able to pass in that Netlink call, give me indices 1, 3, 3E, which I think is the manifest or whatever it is, whatever that manifest code is, and and 9. Those would have to be all individual SPDM calls to do that. There's no way to batch those together in one call, which makes handling it a lot harder.
Yeah,
so you can say, just give me this one index, and you can get a signed index call, measurement of that index back. But if you're trying to, it seems to be a one or everything kind of model. Like there's no reasonable, if you want like more than one index out of it, you just need to request everything and deal with it yourself.
Yeah, the idea would be that it would be some kind of kernel side batching where you say like internally the kernel can like lock other people out. You can get your weird mix of things without somebody else interrupting you. But yeah, like that's almost a solution we're looking for a problem. But I will warn you that the video is just that's just Lucas typing and demoing. Like he was doing like a live narration of it, and so it does. So basically, don't go through that expecting to hear the conversation. It's just that video is just a screencast.
Okay. Yeah, I guess I'll get to hear his side of responses to people's questions, but maybe not the questions themselves.
Yeah,
I think this would be a good topic of conversation for these meetings still, to understand what exactly the use cases for this interface is.
Yeah.
Because if you're going to talk about kernel side batching of individual measurement indexes, that gives you that comes back into, now we need to have some sort of persistent memory in the kernel for batching these together to return them to user space, right?
Oh yeah.
That was part of the reason why we didn't want the stuff in sysfs, because that can grow rather large as well.
Yeah.
So, but
yeah. So like those conversation questions would be good for the meetings. Yeah, with the EU friendly time zone meeting, which we have one coming up on the 25th, and I'll make sure Lucas comes for that so we can get his digest of what's next on that interface.
Yeah, because I agree. Netlink is probably going to be the easiest in terms of passing random parameters for tweaking the measurement call.
Yep.
That's the road I was going down initially, and then Lucas came along and said, we're going to do it through sysfs. I'm like, okay, if that's the route we're going down, we'll try going down that. And then now we seem to be back at that sysfs, not sysfs, Netlink interface.
Yeah.
And you'd put that as a Netlink family inside the TSM. So have the TSM code handle that instead of like sitting in the PCI core instead.
Or yeah, it would either be a, I imagine it would either be like a generic PCI core class that TSM also has a flavor of, or if we really, I mean, it depends. Like if we really need to have our own TSM class for it, but I'm hoping it'd be something ideally generic for PCI security material, kind of in general, and whether it's TSM or CMA shouldn't matter too much for the Netlink family. I would hope.
Well, I agree. There's definitely a core part that's shared, but that would be usable regardless of CMA or TDIS, and that's the one that's actually going to send the messages to the the device over the mailbox. But it does sound like the TSM module and the guest is not going to request the device to get the measurement unless the device is maybe in direct device assignment mode. But even then, the TSM is still supposed to manage the SPDM session, right?
Well, it's something like the guest sees the TDI and asks for the measurements, and the TSM says, "Oh, hey, you're asking for measurements, but this is actually TDI, so I got them. I'll get them through my TSM special path, and not the not do the SPDM session myself. I'll just give you the results from what the TSM module gave back."
Is there a proposal for a generic interface for determining if something is a TDI, except for the one that has there been discussion of the generic interface for that, or is the only discussion out there right now the TIO patch set from AMD?
Right now, it's only the TIO patch set, but that's also the kind of the reaction is like, hey, like this is an RFC quality kind of get something together to show proof of life, but maybe not what we're going to commit to long term. But yeah, at some point it's it really depends on like how specific we want to get, because right now with Lucas's patch set, a PCI device can say it's authenticated, or and a TSM, and right now the proposal is a TSM device can say that that PCI device object is connected, and when we get to the point where the guest can say the same thing, hey, this device is known and connected to the TSM, I'm not sure I'm not, at least for user space, I'm not sure you need more than that to say, okay, yeah, now I can run all my TDIS flows.
Yeah, and that comes across as some sort of UDEV attribute, right?
Yeah, just a
yeah. So you could write rules against that attribute to determine if it's a TDI and trigger the TDM in those cases.
Yep.
And even in the CMA case, right? Because the CMA attestation doesn't want to be in user space, in kernel space either. It would rather be in user space. So you could even probably use a TDM for that as well. Yep. Except the point where CMA wants the attestations earlier than where the TDI wants it.
I think it should be the typical use case where yeah.
Okay. Yeah, so I didn't have much more to talk about today. Yeah, this was kind of an office hours session. I see that Steve joined. I don't know if you had any comments to add, Steve. But
I didn't have any comments to add for now. I had a conflict for the first part and just was able to hop in.
Okay. Well, yeah, good to see you. But other than that, yeah, I think iterating on the list and then getting back together on the 25th, especially when Lucas can be here again to give the next update on what's going on with that link.
I guess I have one more question. Did anyone chime in during the CMA discussion about needing SPDM for anything besides PCI? Because SPDM can be over, I think, CXL as well, right? It could be part of CXL. There's SPDM over HTTP. Like, but I guess that wouldn't go through the kernel. But there's other transports that SPDM can go over. Has anyone chimed in and said, hey, we need this for other transports than PCI?
I mean, I think the Western Digital storage folks are interested in SPDM for things that aren't DOE mailboxes. They're like Opal and other kind of storage security protocols.
Yeah, storage is a whole other mess, right? Because there's nothing TDIS compliant in storage yet. So
yeah,
that's.
I think I was talking to someone that was trying to find a way to make VTPMs work without TD partitions for TDX, and were interested in trying to set up some sort of multi-VM solution to have a VM that contained it, and then have SBDM as the protocol for communicating between the primary guest and the additional BTPM. I don't recall the details of what they were thinking there or how that would work, but there was someone was thinking about that as well. I don't know if that actually has any implications for this conversation, though.
Okay.
It's just if we do have a netlink interface to say we would like measurements for this device, and you can't just assume it's a PCI device, then you need to come up with a different way of specifying the device identifier. Right?
Oh yeah, but at least for me, I think that's somebody else's problem. for the,
Yeah.
The TSM.
Yeah, but that doesn't stop people on the mailing list from chiming in when it's time to review patches.
That's the fun part. For some definition of fun. Okay, but yeah, that's all I have for this round, and then try to do a better job of getting agenda items on the list. But this time slot is a bit difficult, especially because we lose all the we also lose all the like Lucas and people working on that side of it for this call. But yeah, if there's no other comments, we can call it. Any parting shots before we close for today? If not, yeah, thanks. Appreciate the discussion, and we will talk again next time.
Thanks, Dan.
Okay, see you.
Thanks, Dan. See you later.
Bye.